Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the cold, oppressive quiet of a 4 a.m. prison count. Imagine a place where every second is monitored, every wall is reinforced steel and concrete, and the man in the cell at the end of the hall is considered so dangerous, so cunning, that they call him the Ghost. Now imagine the stomach-dropping moment a rookie guard's flashlight beam lands on the bunk and the chilling realization dawns that the man-shaped lump under the blanket is just a little too still. This is one of those stories that burrows under your skin, a tale of meticulous planning against impossible odds, so you probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. When you're done, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air in the segregation wing of Blackgate Maximum Security Penitentiary is thick with the smell of industrial disinfectant and unspoken despair. It's a sterile, silent world, broken only by the rhythmic squeak of Corrections Officer Miller's rubber-soled boots on the polished concrete. This is a 4 a.m. standing count, a sacred ritual in the world of incarceration. Miller, barely 6 months out of the academy, still feels a knot of anxiety tighten in his gut every time he walks this tier. This is the supermax wing, a prison within a prison, and at the very end of the corridor is cell A17, the domain of Silas Croft. Silas isn't just an inmate, he's a legend, a former military cryptographer doing a life sentence for selling state secrets. He's never caused a problem. No fights, no contraband, no angry words. He just exists. In 15 years, he's become a piece of the prison's architecture, a phantom the other inmates speak of in hushed, reverent tones. They call him the Ghost, not because he's scary, but because he seems to barely interact with the physical world. Miller shines his heavy mag light into the narrow vertical window of A17. The cell is Spartan, a concrete slab for a bed, a toilet sink combo, a small metal desk bolted to the floor. On the bunk, a figure lies under a thin wool blanket facing the wall. Miller marks his clipboard, inmate present. He moves to the next cell, the ritual continuing, but a flicker of something, a primal sense of wrongness, makes him pause. He walks back to A17, pressing his face closer to the thick, shatterproof glass. The stillness, it's too perfect. Even in sleep, people move. They twitch, they breathe, their chest rises and falls. The lump under the blanket is as motionless as a concrete bed it rests on. A cold dread, colder than the refrigerated air pumping through the vents, creeps up Miller's spine. He fumbles with his keys, his hand shaking. "Croft," he calls out, his voice a dry rasp. "Standing count. Show me some life." Nothing. He calls again, louder, the sound echoing unnaturally in the tomb-like silence. The protocol is clear. No response requires cell entry. He radios for his supervisor, his voice cracking. "Supervisor to Alpha Seg, non-responsive inmate cell A17. Within 2 minutes, Sergeant Davies, a man with a face like a worn leather satchel, arrives with another officer. The override key turns and the heavy steel door groans open with the pneumatic hiss. Davis enters first, baton held ready. He reaches down and rips the blanket off the figure. And there it is, the first baffling twist in a story that would soon captivate the nation. It's not Silas Croft, it's a dummy, a meticulously crafted sculpture of deception. Its head is a papier-mâché-like globe made from toilet paper and what looks like years' worth of pulped-up novels, its face painted with stolen coffee grounds and fruit juice to mimic skin tone. Real human hair, undoubtedly Croft's own saved strand by strand, is glued to the scalp. But the oddest detail, the one that makes the blood of all 3 men run cold, is that the dummy is dressed in the torso of a freshly pressed, brand new corrections officer shirt. It's folded with military precision, an impossible acquisition for any inmate, let alone one in the most secure unit in the state. The warden is on the tier in less than 10 minutes, his face a mask of controlled fury. An immediate lockdown is declared. Sirens, usually a distant part of the city's soundscape, begin to wail from the prison itself. The cell is torn apart, but there's nothing. The bars on the tiny window are intact. The vent is welded shut. The steel door is unbreached. The walls and floor are solid, reinforced concrete. It's as if Silas Croft just ceased to exist. The escape immediately triggers a federal response because escape from a facility housing federal prisoners is a violation of U.S. Code Title 18, Section 751. It's a serious felony, one that baffles investigators in this case. Why would a man already serving a life without parole risk adding another 20 years? The charge is meaningless to him, yet he's orchestrated this masterpiece of an escape. As the initial shock wears off, the irony of the situation settles in like a fine dust. This entire wing, the secure housing unit, was a $50 million project completed just 2 years prior. It was hailed by its architects as the future of incarceration, an escape-proof marvel of modern technology. Every inch is monitored by pressure plates, microphones, and thermal cameras. The warden himself had boasted to a local news crew that an inmate was more likely to be struck by a meteorite in his cell than to find a way out. And yet, the ghost is gone. In the initial frantic hours, legal experts are already being consulted, debating the finer points of the law. There's a long-standing argument about the concept of constructive custody. The question is, at what exact point is an inmate considered escaped? Is it when they breach their cell, the building, the first perimeter fence, the outer wall? This isn't just academic. It dictates when the U.S. Marshals officially take lead jurisdiction, and more critically, when lethal force is authorized. For now, Silas Croft exists in a legal gray area. A man who is no longer in his cell, but has left no trace of his path out of it. A phantom who has just challenged the very definition of the word secure. The cell, A17, is no longer a cell. It's a crime scene. But it's the cleanest, most sterile crime scene the FBI's lead forensic investigator, a woman named Dr. Alves, has ever encountered. Her team, clad in sterile white suits, sweeps every surface with brushes, sprays luminol that reveals nothing, and runs magnetometers that beep only at the regulation metal fixtures. It's infuriating. There's no dust from drilled concrete, no microscopic metal shavings, no foreign DNA. It's as if Silas Croft simply dematerialized. The only piece of non-regulation evidence is the dummy, which is now being delicately disassembled in a lab. The prison-issue shirt on it is the first major puzzle. The inventory shows no shirts missing from the laundry or supply closets. It's a ghost shirt on a ghost inmate. The task force has commandeered the warden's spacious office. The air is a mix of stale coffee and rising panic. Leading the investigation is U.S. Marshal Dominic Russo, a man who looks more like a history professor than a manhunter. He's known for his quiet, methodical approach, a stark contrast to the frantic energy in the room. He's staring at a single photograph of Silas Croft on a large monitor. The man in the picture has unassuming, intelligent eyes. He looks like someone you'd stand behind in a coffee shop and forget a moment later. That's what made him such a good spy, and it's what makes him such a terrifying fugitive. Russo's team starts by digging into Croft's past, peeling back the layers of his life before Blackgate. His file is both thick and thin. Thick with military commendations and classified reports from his time in signals intelligence. Thin on personal details. No family, few friends, a life lived in the shadows even before he was a traitor. He was convicted of espionage after being caught selling encryption keys for a next-generation satellite network, a classic tale of betrayal. But Russo sees a wrinkle. During his trial, Croft never spoke. He didn't defend himself, didn't deny the charges, didn't work with his own lawyer. He just sat in serene silence, accepting his fate. This leads Russo to request the full discovery evidence from the original prosecution, a legal procedure known as a Brady disclosure review. He's not looking for evidence of innocence, he's looking for character clues the original prosecutors might have overlooked or deemed irrelevant. Maybe there's an old psychological profile, a letter, an interview with a colleague that paints a fuller picture. While they wait for those files to be unearthed from a government archive, they focus on his life inside. And here the second twist unfurls. Croft's prison life was a monument to routine. He ate, he exercised in his cell, and he read. He read voraciously.
A junior analyst on Russo's team is tasked with the mind-numbing job of cross-referencing Croft's library requests for the past 15 years. For the first 13 years, it's what you'd expect. Classic literature, history, philosophy. But in the last 2 years, something changes. The requests become bizarrely eclectic. One week, it's a textbook on geological soil composition. The next, a manual on pre-World War II plumbing schematics. Then a treatise on acoustics, a book on the migratory patterns of local birds, a biography of Harry Houdini, and a collection of modernist poetry. It looks like the random intellectual grazing of a brilliant, bored mind. But Russo doesn't believe in random. There's a pattern here, he murmurs, staring at the list. We're just not smart enough to see it yet. This discovery feeds into a heated debate now raging among the criminal profilers and psychologists brought in to consult. One camp argues that Croft is a classic example of an institutionalized man. After so long in a controlled environment, they claim, the outside world would be terrifying and overwhelming. This escape, they theorize, isn't about freedom, it's a grand intellectual exercise, a final, elaborate chess move against the system. He'll likely make a mistake on purpose, allowing himself to be caught, his point having been made. But another smaller group of experts vehemently disagrees. They point to his background as a cryptographer. His entire life was about creating and breaking complex systems. They argue he's been playing the long game since the day he was sentenced, that his quiet compliance wasn't acceptance, but camouflage. He wasn't becoming institutionalized, he was studying the institution, learning its rhythms and weaknesses, and is now perfectly equipped to survive on the outside. Back in cell A17, a young forensic tech, tired and frustrated, is doing a final, pointless sweep. He's lying on his back, shining a UV light under the metal desk, a place that's already been checked 3 times. Something catches his eye. Not a hidden compartment, not a tool, but a tiny, almost invisible etching in the steel. It's so fine it looks like a stray scratch from a staple. Under a portable microscope, the scratch resolves into letters. It's a quote etched with a needle-fine point. The walls of confinement are only as strong as the mind of the prisoner. A wave of excitement ripples through the team. It's their first real message from the ghost. But the excitement is short-lived. A quick search reveals the quote is famously attributed to an escape artist named Jasper Maskelyne. Except, the etching under Croft's desk has a small, final inscription: Voltaire. This is the third twist, a baffling act of intellectual vandalism. Croft, the meticulous genius, has misattributed the quote. Why? Was it a simple mistake? Unlikely. Was it a clue, a taunt? Or was he, like a true cryptographer, embedding a message inside a message? He's not just showing them that he could escape, he's showing them that he's playing an entirely different game whose rules they don't yet understand. He hasn't just left an empty cell, he's left them a philosophical riddle.
The hunt for Silas Croft is now a full-blown national spectacle. His face, calm and unassuming, is on every news channel, every digital billboard. A $50,000 reward is offered, then quickly raised to $100,000. The U.S. Marshals Service, the lead agency in fugitive recovery operations, is throwing every resource it has at the problem. They're running down tips from crackpots and clairvoyants, chasing blurry gas station security footage of men who vaguely resemble a ghost. Each lead is a thread that frays into nothing. Marshal Russo sets up his command post in a borrowed FBI mobile unit parked just inside the prison's main gate. The place hums with the low thrum of servers and the tense murmur of analysts. On one wall, a massive map of the state is covered in pins and strings, a desperate attempt to impose logic on chaos. So far, the map is mockingly blank. Croft has made no contact with known associates because he has none. His bank accounts, frozen since his conviction, remain untouched. He hasn't used a phone or a credit card. He is, for all intents and purposes, invisible. Russo's team focuses on what they know. Croft is brilliant, patient, and a master of systems. He wouldn't have just planned his escape from the cell, he would have planned his first 24, 48, 72 hours of freedom with the same painstaking detail. They go back to the list of library books, the geology text, the plumbing schematics, the acoustics manual. They feel like the keys, but the lock is nowhere to be found. They bring in a civil engineer to look at the prison's original blueprints from the 1930s, cross-referencing them with the modern upgrades.
The prison is built on solid bedrock, a geological fortress. There are old sewer lines and storm drains, but they were all filled with concrete or gated decades ago during security overhauls. The engineer assures them nothing gets in or out of this facility from below ground. The first potential break comes from a bus station in a town 30 miles north. A ticket agent, a woman with a memory for faces, calls the hotline. She's certain she sold a ticket to a man matching Croft's description. He paid in cash for a one-way ticket to Chicago, departing at 5:15 a.m., roughly an hour after the escape was discovered. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, kept his head down, and seemed nervous. It's a solid lead. The Marshals get a warrant for the station's security footage. After hours of scrubbing through grainy video, they find him. The man's build is right. His gait matches what they've seen from Croft's old prison yard recordings. It's him. It has to be. Russo dispatches a team to Chicago, and a bolo, be on the lookout, is issued to law enforcement all along the bus route. The command post feels a surge of collective relief. The Phantom is becoming human again. But Russo is uneasy. It feels too easy, too conventional for a man like Croft. This is the first ironic twist of the manhunt. Their best lead is also their most suspicious. Russo keeps a junior agent, a sharp kid named Chen, on the original footage. He watches it again. Watch everything else. The people around him, the background, the trash cans. Look for what shouldn't be there. While the Chicago team is in the air, a second lead comes in. This one is from a truck stop 60 miles in the opposite direction, to the south. A waitress reports a man who sat in a corner booth for 2 hours, drinking only water and staring at a map. He also matched Croft's description, right down to the quiet, intense eyes she saw on the news. She remembers an odd detail. He paid for his $2 water with a crisp $50 bill and told her to keep the change. He left behind a newspaper, folded neatly on the table. When the local sheriff's deputy recovers the newspaper, he finds it's a day-old edition of the Wall Street Journal, and on the front page, circled in faint pencil, is a single stock ticker symbol, AZY. This is the second twist. AZY is a defunct biotech firm that went bankrupt 5 years ago. It's worthless. A ghost stock for a ghost inmate. Is it another taunt or a destination? The company's old headquarters was in a small tech park in a different state. Is he telling them where he's going? The profilers are divided again. One side claims it's pure misdirection, a breadcrumb designed to send them on a wild goose chase south while he's actually on a bus to Chicago. The other side believes a narcissist like Croft can't resist showing off, and this is his way of playing with them. This debate is central to a long-standing law enforcement puzzle. How do you profile a suspect who is by definition an outlier? Standard criminal profiling relies on patterns of behavior seen in other offenders. But when you're hunting a true original, the models break down. You can't predict his next move based on a database of lesser minds. Just as Russo is about to divert resources to check out the AZY lead, Agent Chen calls him over to the video monitor. "Marshal, you need to see this." He's isolated a section of the bus station footage moments after our suspect boards. In the background, a homeless man is digging through a trash can. He pulls something out, looks at it, and shoves it into his coat. It's a baseball cap and sunglasses, the exact ones our Croft was wearing. A few minutes later, the real bus to Chicago pulls out. Our suspect, however, is seen slipping out a side door of the station, his head now bare. He walks across the street, gets into the passenger seat of a waiting sedan, which then drives off, heading west. He had a partner. He had a vehicle. He was never on the bus. He used a decoy. The entire Chicago lead was a meticulously constructed piece of theater. The sigh of relief in the command post turns into a collective groan of frustration. Silas Croft isn't just running, he's actively managing their investigation. He's feeding them leads designed to waste their time and resources. He's not just a phantom, he's a puppeteer, and they are all dancing on his strings. The blank map on the wall suddenly seems to mock Russo, a testament not to a lack of information, but to an overabundance of disinformation. He has outsmarted them at every turn, and he's still just getting started.
The manhunt is now in its 5th day, and the mood in the command post has soured from tense determination to grim resignation. They are no closer to finding Silas Croft than they were the moment they discovered the papier-mâché dummy in his cell. The decoy at the bus station was a professional slap in the face. The circled stock symbol was a red herring that sent a team to a dusty, abandoned office park in Delaware. They have been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and publicly humiliated. Marshal Russo, feeling the immense pressure from Washington, makes a call he's been resisting for days. It's a move often seen as a last resort in modern law enforcement, an admission that cutting-edge technology and human intellect have failed. He's calling in a canine unit. But this isn't just any canine unit. It's not a standard German Shepherd trained to sniff out drugs or explosives. He's requesting a specialist, a cadaver scent dog. This is the first strange detail, the move that makes everyone on the task force raise an eyebrow. Cadaver dogs are trained to detect the unique chemical compounds released by human decomposition. They are used to find clandestine graves, to locate victims after natural disasters. Why would Russo request a dog trained to find the dead to locate a man who is very much alive? Russo's logic is unconventional. Croft left no scent trail outside the prison, but he had to have gotten out somehow. Russo is circling back to the impossible idea of a tunnel, despite the engineer's assurances. A tunnel means displaced earth, and for a dog with a hypersensitive nose, old, disturbed earth gives off a scent profile eerily similar to that of decomposition, a faint, organic decay. He's not looking for Croft's scent, he's looking for the scent of his path. This tactic is actually rooted in a real, albeit niche, field of forensic science. At crime scenes where a body has been moved, these dogs can sometimes detect residual scent, the lingering odor of death left in soil or on carpets, even years later. Russo is betting that the same principle applies to tons of excavated dirt. It's a long shot, but it's the only shot they have left. The next day, a dusty, unmarked pickup truck pulls up to the command post. Out climbs a man who seems as out of place as a cowboy at a tech conference. His name is Marcus Thorne, and he's the dog's handler. Thorne is a wiry, sun-beaten man with a quiet intensity that makes the FBI agents in their crisp suits uncomfortable. He's not law enforcement. He's a civilian contractor, a specialist from a rural corner of the state who works on retainer for difficult cases. In the passenger seat is his partner, Rocco, a black and tan bloodhound with soulful, drooping eyes and ears that look like velvet curtains. The introduction is tense. The FBI agency of folksy dog handler. Thorne sees a room full of people who have failed and now are looking to his dog for a miracle. He lays down his rules immediately. He works off leash. Nobody talks to him. Nobody tries to pet him. Nobody makes eye contact with him. You treat him like he's invisible. Your energy will just distract him. He's not here to make friends. He's here to work. The agents exchange skeptical glances. Thorne takes a sterile cloth that was sealed in an evidence bag from Croft's cell, a cloth that had been wiped over the surface of the unbreached toilet. He lets Rocco sniff it for a full minute. The dog takes in the scent, his great chest rising and falling slowly. Then Thorne gives a quiet, one-word command: "Find." The agents expect Rocco to start casting about, trying to pick up a trail leading away from the prison. But the dog does something utterly perplexing. He completely ignores the scent on the cloth. He lifts his nose to the air, sniffs deeply, and then, with a low, mournful bay that echoes off the prison walls, he turns and trots purposefully back towards the supermax wing. Thorne follows without a word, a long leather leash held loosely in his hand. Russo and a handful of agents trail behind, confused. "What's he doing?" an agent whispers to Russo. "He's going the wrong way." "No, he's not," Russo murmurs, his eyes fixed on the dog. "He's ignoring the scent we gave him. He's found something else, something stronger." This is the second twist. The dog, their last hope, is seemingly rejecting the very premise of the search. Rocco leads them through the prison grounds, past the recreation yards and the mess hall, his nose held high, tasting the air. He's not tracking a scent on the ground. He's following a current in the wind. He finally stops at a place that makes no sense. A small, overgrown patch of land sandwiched between the prison's outer perimeter fence and an old laundry facility that was decommissioned years ago. It's a forgotten piece of real estate, littered with rusted equipment and choked with weeds. It's a dead zone on the security map, considered irrelevant because it's technically still within the secure perimeter. No one would escape here. And here a legal debate resurfaces among the agents trailing the dog.
The use of specialist canines, especially in unconventional ways, often faces court challenges. Defense attorneys can argue that a dog's alert, especially for a scent as abstract as disturbed earth, doesn't meet the standard for probable cause needed for a search. It's seen as less reliable than a dog alerting to narcotics. The theory is that the handler can unconsciously cue the dog, a phenomenon known as the clever Hans effect. If Rocco is wrong, any evidence they find could be thrown out of court. They are gambling a crucial part of their case on the instincts of an animal. Rocco, oblivious to the legal complexities of his work, begins to whine anxiously. He paused at a thick, thorny bush growing against the foundation of the old laundry building. Thorn calms him with a soft touch. "Show me," he says quietly. The massive dog shoves his head deep into the thorns, heedless of the scratches, and lets out a single, sharp bark. Thorn kneels, pulls back the thorny branches, and there, almost completely obscured by the overgrown vegetation, is a small, perfectly square section of the concrete foundation that is a slightly different color. It's a shade grayer, newer, and at its base, almost invisible, is a thin, dark line, a seam. It's a masterful piece of camouflage, something you would never find unless you knew exactly where to look, or unless you had a dog who could smell the impossible, the faint, ghostly scent of buried, breathing earth. The third twist lands with the weight of concrete. The tunnel didn't start in the cell. It ended there.
The discovery of the concrete patch sends a jolt of adrenaline through the task force. This isn't just a lead, it's a seismic shift in the entire investigation. The exit point, disguised as a piece of the building's foundation, is a work of art. The texture of the concrete plug has been artificially aged and weathered to match the surrounding wall. The seam is so fine, it's barely visible to the naked eye. Croft didn't break out, he was let out, or rather, he emerged from a pre-built passage. A team of prison engineers, the same ones who had previously sworn the ground was impenetrable, are now on their hands and knees examining the plug with a mixture of awe and professional shame. They tap it, listen with stethoscopes, and finally bring in a portable X-ray main. The image that appears on their screen is astounding. It's not just a patch, it's a hinged door, complete with a sophisticated internal locking mechanism. There are no external hinges, no handle, no visible way to open it. The question of how Croft opened it from the inside is superseded by a more pressing one. Where did he get the scent that Rocco was tracking? Rocco wasn't smelling Croft, he was smelling the tunnel itself. This is the first truly bizarre detail of this new chapter. The scent of disturbed earth that Rocco detected was impossibly fresh. Geologists are brought in, taking core samples of the soil around the exit end. Their findings are baffling. The soil composition directly around the tunnel exit is completely different from the native soil of the area. It contains traces of clay and minerals found over 200 miles away near an old industrial quarry. This tunnel wasn't dug from the inside out or the outside in a traditional sense. It seems to have been constructed using foreign materials, smuggled onto the prison grounds piece by piece. This leads Marshal Russo to a chilling hypothesis. Silas Croft didn't have an accomplice on the outside for a day or a week. He has had a dedicated, highly skilled team working for years. This wasn't just an escape, it was a construction project. Who would have the resources, the patience, and the motive to execute such an audacious plan? The focus of the investigation shifts from Croft the lone genius to Croft the commander of an unseen conspiracy. While the engineers figure out how to bypass the lock on the concrete door, Russo orders a full forensic analysis of the decommissioned laundry building. The place is a time capsule from the 1980s, thick with dust and the ghosts of old machinery. It's considered a non-secure ancillary building, used for storage of obsolete equipment. Inmates haven't had access to it for decades. But as the forensics team sweeps the interior, they find the second ironic twist. In a dusty corner, tucked behind a row of derelict washing machines, They find a small makeshift living space. There's a sleeping bag, a collection of empty water bottles, and a stack of books. The books are all poetry. And lying on top of the sleeping bag is a single worn leather glove. This wasn't just the exit point, it was the staging area. Someone had been living here intermittently for what looks like months, if not years. The discovery of this nest ignites a fierce debate among legal scholars following the case. The concept of domain of control becomes critical. The prison's legal responsibility is for the secure perimeter. This laundry building, while on government property, was outside the monitored fence line and considered low priority. Does the warden's negligence in securing an abandoned building constitute a form of state-created danger, potentially mitigating Croft's own culpability? It's a contentious legal theory that argues government negligence can, in rare cases, create the very opportunity for the crime to occur. While it wouldn't excuse the escape, it could become a significant factor in the prosecution of any accomplices and would certainly be the centerpiece of a massive civil lawsuit against the prison system. Rocco, the hero of the hour, is brought back to the staging area. He sniffs the sleeping bag, the books, the glove. Handler Marcus Thorne watches his dog's subtle cues. A flick of the ear, a slight change in posture. "It's him," Thorne says quietly to Russo. "His scent is all over this stuff, but it's old, weeks, maybe months." Then Rocco does something else. He walks over to a grimy window overlooking the supermax wing, puts his paws up on the sill, and lets out a low guttural whine. He's staring directly at the window of cell A17, a quarter mile away. This is the third and most chilling twist of this section. From this vantage point in the laundry, with a decent pair of binoculars, one would have a clear, direct line of sight into Croft's cell. The conspiracy wasn't just about digging, it was about surveillance. Croft's accomplices weren't just building a tunnel to him, they were watching him. They knew his routines, his schedule, the exact moment to act. Remember that odd quote Croft etched under his desk? "The walls of confinement are only as strong as the mind of the prisoner." They had assumed it was about his own mental fortitude. Now a darker interpretation emerges. Maybe he wasn't the prisoner he was referring to. Maybe he was talking about the warden, the guards, the investigators, all of them trapped in their own confined assumptions, unable to see the truth that was right in front of them, being watched from a dusty window across the yard. The dog isn't just smelling a man, he's smelling the ghost of a meticulous, long-term surveillance operation that turned the prison's own security into a one-way mirror.
With the external door identified, the engineers worked for hours before they finally managed to bypass the ingenious internal lock. It's a magnetic system, triggered by a precise sequence of polarized pulses, a lock with no keyhole, expecting a signal that only Croft and his conspirators would know. They override it with a massive electromagnet, and the heavy concrete plug swings inward with a silent hydraulic smoothness that speaks of high-level engineering. The air that flows out is cool and smells of damped clay and ozone. Before them lies the abyss, a perfectly square 4-foot by 4-foot tunnel, shored up with steel beams and lit by a string of low-wattage LED lights. It's not a crudely dug hole, it's a subterranean highway. Marshal Russo, Thorne, Rocco, and a small, heavily armed tactical team prepare to descend. The atmosphere is thick with attention. You could cut with a knife. They're entering a space entirely built and controlled by their quarry. Every foot of this tunnel is a potential ambush. Standard procedure for tactical entries in confined spaces like this is governed by strict federal guidelines, often involving robotic cameras and seismic sensors. But this situation is unprecedented. There are no blueprints, no schematics. They are quite literally going in blind. Rocco goes first, off-leash, with Thorne right behind him. The dog is their canary in this coal mine, his nose able to detect the presence of another human long before their eyes can. The team follows in single file, their helmet-mounted lights cutting sharp, dancing beams into the darkness. The tunnel is an engineering marvel. The walls are smooth, packed earth reinforced with pressure-treated lumber. There's even a rudimentary ventilation system, a series of small PVC pipes running along the ceiling, providing a steady, if faint, supply of fresh air. This wasn't dug with shovels, it was excavated with professional equipment. About 200 yards in, they find the first odd detail, a small alcove carved into the wall. Inside is a single folding chair, a vacuum-sealed flask of water, and a copy of Plato's Republic. It's a rest stop. The sheer audacity of it is staggering. The idea that the builders anticipated the work would be so strenuous, they engineered break rooms into their illicit tunnel. It's a sign of unhurried, methodical work, not a frantic escape. As they venture deeper, the tunnel begins a gradual, almost imperceptible descent. The air grows colder. They're well below the prison's foundation now, in the realm of bedrock and ancient earth. The team's comm system starts to crackle with static, the sheer mass of rock above them interfering with the radio waves. They are cut off, alone in the dark with a ghost. This is where the first ironic twist of the descent occurs. The most technologically advanced law enforcement agency in the world is now relying on the most primitive tools, a dog's nose and a man's intuition. All their high-tech gear is failing them, useless in this environment designed by an expert in signals, the very field that put Croft in prison. He has drawn them onto his home turf, a place where he controls the physics. Suddenly, Rocco stops. He stands rigid, the fur on his back raised. A loud growl rumbles in his chest. Thorne puts a hand on his back, silencing him. Up ahead, around the slight bend, a faint light flickers. Russo motions for the team to halt, killing their lights. They creep forward in the pitch black, their senses screaming. The only sounds are their own breathing and the frantic thumping of their hearts. As they round a bend, they see the source of the light. It's the base of a vertical shaft, lit by a single, battery-powered lantern. A crude ladder made of rebar is bolted to the shaft wall, leading up. And at the bottom of the ladder, his back to them, is a figure. It's a man in a simple jumpsuit, his head bowed as if in contemplation. They have him. The tactical team raises their weapons, laser sights dancing like red fireflies on the man's back. Federal agents, on the ground, now! Russo's voice is a thunderclap in the confined space. The figure doesn't move. He doesn't startle, doesn't raise his hands. He simply remains still, his shoulders slumped. The team leader repeats the command, his voice sharper, more menacing. And then, in a moment of supreme anticlimax, the figure, slowly, almost wearily, turns around. The entire team freezes. It's not Silas Croft. It's the warden. Warden Hennessy. His face is pale, his eyes hollowed out with exhaustion and defeat. This is the second, mind-shattering twist. He's not a hostage, he's a participant. On the floor beside him is a small open briefcase containing bundles of cash and a passport with his picture, but a different name. Before anyone can process this, Rocco lets out a frantic, high-pitched bark and lunges, not at the warden, but at the vertical shaft behind him. He's clawing at the packed earth at the base of the ladder. Thorne pulls him back, confused. "What is it, boy?" And that's when they hear it. A faint, rhythmic scraping sound, coming from inside the wall. This final twist is what breaks the case wide open. The real exit to the tunnel wasn't the ladder leading up. That was a decoy, a dead end designed to trap anyone who followed. The true path was a concealed crawl space, a tunnel within the tunnel. And inside it, they find him, Silas Croft. He's not running, he's not hiding. He's on his back, calmly digging with a small entrenching tool, methodically trying to collapse the tunnel behind him. When the team's lights hit his face, he doesn't even blink. He just sets his tool down and says with no emotion whatsoever, "You're late. I was expecting you 10 minutes ago." His capture raises an immediate and complex legal debate, the coercion and duress defense. The warden, now in custody, claims he was forced to cooperate, that he had threatened his family. But the evidence, the briefcase, the passport, suggests he was a willing partner, preparing to flee himself. Proving duress requires demonstrating an immediate threat of death or serious bodily harm, a high legal bar. Was the warden a victim or a co-conspirator? The answer will determine whether he spends the rest of his life in a suit or a prison jumpsuit, a question that now lies at the heart of this bizarre case.
The capture of Silas Croft and Warden Hennessy doesn't feel like a victory.
It feels like the beginning of an entirely new and more confusing puzzle. Back in the sterile interrogation rooms of the FBI field office, the two men present a study in contrasts. Hennessy, the disgraced warden, is a wreck. He alternates between rambling, self-pitying confessions and stony silence, his story changing with every telling. At first, he insists he was a victim, that Croft somehow blackmailed him with a secret from his past. Then, he claims Croft promised him a share of some hidden fortune. His lawyers are already building a duress defense, but the case against him is damning. Financial records show that Hennessy's wife received a series of large, untraceable wire transfers originating from a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands over the last 2 years, the exact time frame of the tunnel's construction. Silas Croft, on the other hand, is an island of calm in a sea of chaos. He sits in his interrogation room, hands folded on the metal table, radiating an unnerving serenity. He has invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, but he does it politely, almost apologetically. He answers no questions about the tunnel, his accomplices, or his motives. Marshal Russo and his team try every tactic in the book. Good cop, bad cop, appeals to ego, appeals to logic. Croft just watches him, his expression one of mild academic curiosity, as if they are the subjects of his study, not the other way around. His silence is absolute, but his actions are bizarre. He makes only 2 requests. First, he wants a copy of the day's newspaper, specifically the international edition. Second, he wants to speak to a representative from the State Department. Not a lawyer, not a family member, a diplomat. This is the first strange detail, and it sends the investigator scrambling. Why the State Department? He was convicted of selling state secrets, making him an enemy of the state. Why would he believe they would have any interest in speaking with him now? The request is initially denied, but Russo, sensing this might be the only key to unlocking the mystery, pulls some strings. A mid-level career diplomat named Evelyn Reed is sent over more as a formality than anything else. She enters the interrogation room with a file and a healthy dose of skepticism. The meeting is recorded on video, but with no audio at Croft's insistence, another condition he has somehow managed to negotiate. Through the one-way glass, Russo and his team watch a silent, baffling pantomime. Croft doesn't speak. He simply opens the newspaper he was given, turns to the global finance section, and points to a single obscure article about a pending international trade agreement. He taps the article, looks at Reed, and then taps his own chest. Reed stares at the article for a long moment. Her professional composure cracks. A flicker of disbelief, then horror crosses her face. She stands up abruptly, gathers her things, and leaves the room without a backward glance. When Russo confronts her in the hallway, she is pale and shaken. "I can't tell you what that was about, Marshal. It's a matter of national security." And with that, she's gone, leaving behind a deeper mystery than ever. This is the second infuriating twist. Croft's escape wasn't about freedom. It was a message. He used his spectacular escape to get a 10-minute silent meeting to point to a newspaper article. This single act reframes the entire narrative. The U.S. government reopens Croft's original espionage case file under seal. The legal theory now being debated in the highest, most secret echelons of government is a terrifying one: wrongful conviction of a patriot. What if Croft wasn't a traitor? What if his original crime, selling encryption keys, was actually an act of gray mail, a tactic where a person commits a lesser crime to expose or prevent a much greater one? Experts in intelligence circles argue that perhaps Croft discovered that certain elements within the U.S. were about to use that satellite network as part of an illegal deal, one hidden inside the very trade agreement he pointed to. By selling the keys to a rival, but not overtly hostile nation, he may have rendered the network useless for that secret purpose, scuttling the deal at the cost of his own freedom. He accepted a life sentence and 15 years of silence to stop something far worse. This theory suggests his escape was the final desperate move of a man whose time had run out. The trade agreement was about to be ratified,
and his old secret maneuver would be for nothing. He had to get a message to the right person, and the only way to do that was to create a spectacle so large the government couldn't ignore him. The final devastating irony is that Silas Croft might not have been escaping prison at all. He might have been trying to save the country that imprisoned him. The entire manhunt, the media frenzy, the fear, it was all just his version of a diplomatic pouch. His motive remains unspoken, locked behind his serene smile. Was he a master manipulator who played a warden and the entire justice system? Or was he a misunderstood hero who orchestrated the most elaborate whistleblowing in history? He is returned to a new cell in a new prison, this time in a secret federal facility where even the guards don't know his name. The official story is that a dangerous fugitive was recaptured, but for the handful of people who saw what happened in that interrogation room, the truth is far more complicated. Silas Croft, the ghost, remains at large even in a locked cell. His silence a louder condemnation than any confession could ever be. He didn't escape to get out, he escaped to get their attention. And he has it. The wind now settles over the landscape of this story, and the sharp edges of adrenaline begin to soften. The sirens have faded, the investigators have packed up their kits, and all that remains is the quiet hum of unresolved questions. We are left to ponder the nature of a man like Silas Croft, a figure who reminds us that the most impenetrable walls are often the ones we build in our own minds, the assumptions we fail to question. His story is a testament to the idea that true confinement isn't always about steel bars and concrete, but about the narratives we accept as truth. We leave him in his new cell, a ghost in the machine once more, his ultimate purpose still echoing in the silence he so carefully cultivated. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows. These stories of intrigue and human complexity are what I love to explore, and I'm grateful to have you here with me. If you found yourself leaning closer to the speaker, trying to piece it all together, please consider liking the video and sharing it with someone else who appreciates a good mystery. Drop a comment below with your own theory about Croft's true endgame. I read every one. Until next time, may your nights be peaceful and your own walls less mysterious.